good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody on the call. We're trying a webinar with a slight difference. This time it's not all about Horsefly pitching their product. We're going to be talking about how important it is to establish a really good, inclusive culture, especially when you're hiring, and the promise that you're making to potential candidates is the one that they also experience when they come inside. So Mark Lomas will be joining us from Lloyd's of London, huge player in the insurance market. He's going to be giving us some really good tips. I spoke with Mark earlier this week, and it sounds like it's going to be a really informative session. So I'll be delighted to introduce Mark in just a few seconds. Following Mark will be, well, once you've got the culture right and you've got the organization ready to receive can, you actually need to have some people join you. And that is increasingly difficult in today's world, where vacancies in a lot of places are outnumbering candidates. And in particular, if you're looking for specialist skill sets. So Dave Burford joins us from Mimecast. Welcome, Dave. And he will be talking about how he has used labour market analytics to fill vacancies in the Mimecast organisation, and again going to be giving us some insight into how that was done and a real success story. The format is quite simple. I'll be asking Mark to go first. There'll be an opportunity to ask Q&A straight after Mark's session. To do that, if you look on your panel, there is a Q&A areas. It's usually next to the chat. Please don't use the chat, use Q&A, click on that, and you'll be able to pose a question. I will be moderating those questions so that we don't ask the same one twice. But please feel free to throughout the webinar to put your questions to us on that via that Q&A icon. After that, I'll be inviting Dave to give his thoughts, followed again by Q&A. So please don't wait until the end. Please do those questions, make those questions as we're going through. And then we're going to stop recording, but ask you to stay on the webinar. Because right at the end, we're going to have an unrecorded Q&A. So you can ask those questions, and hopefully Mark and Dave will be able to give us some real good insights, free of the knowledge that this session is being recorded. So we'll see if that works and see where we go with that. But first of all, thank you everyone for joining. And Mark, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself a little more and kick off today's webinar.
Great, thank you very much, Adrian. So I'm Mark Lomas. I'm head of culture at Lloyd's, and my role comprises everything or comprises of everything diversity, inclusion, employee engagement, what we do in well-being, leadership capability, and facing off externally into the Lloyd's market, regulating culture and diversity in the Lloyd's market. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about inclusive culture and how that applies to your kind of inclusive recruitment efforts. So to do that, let me first start kind of give you the context. So Lloyd's itself is well over 300 years old, and the first kind of mention of Lloyd's is in 1688. And then if we, and Lloyd's of course had a sort of one of the main players in marine insurance. And if we fast forward over time, we can see that Lloyd's innovates many policies from the first non-marine policies, kind of 1873, through the aviation policies and motor policies, and 1965, the first kind of satellite policies, and moving forward, kind of more cyber, etc. And that's important because innovation and changing with the times is actually what has kept Lloyd's going all this time. But we haven't always moved fast enough in responding to societal change around people. So the first woman broker to ever work at Lloyd's was in 1972, a woman called Lillian Archibald. And I love her quote from the end of her first day at work, which was, well, at least the roof didn't burn down, which I thought was quite funny, because I thought, well, even if it did, she's definitely in the right place to get insurance. And then we fast forward to sort of 1978, and we have the first black broker in the Lloyd's market. And Lloyd's is slowly starting to change with the times. Fast forward a couple of decades, and 2019, we find ourselves on the receiving end of a sort of expose in Bloomberg around sort of sexual harassment and alcohol culture in the market. And it's the first time that Lloyd's has to get really serious about its culture work, setting standards for the market, doing that through regulation. And then in 2020, Black Lives Matter comes. And Lloyd's has to apologize for its role in the transatlantic slave economy and set out how we're going to address those issues through researching our history and forward-looking plans. And then in 2021, along comes the global pandemic. And Lloyd's is the center of insurance because of the iconic underwriting room. And so all of a sudden, people can't be in the underwriting room. How does a face-to-face market work without that sort of face-to-face place to do business? So over the last 3 years, it's been a really kind of monumental shifts in expectations around culture, around diversity for the Lloyd's market. And responding to that is absolutely critical in terms of our ability to attract talent, not only into Lloyd's the corporation, but into the broader market. And I suppose one of the most important aspects of that and overcoming those challenges has been transparency. And I want to talk a little bit about transparency in culture and D&I work. You see lots of organizations do lots of nice stuff on social media about closing the gender pay gaps or how they're really positive about diversity. But it doesn't take much digging to find that those statements and positions are very hollow. And with access to social media, with access to far more information, candidates are far more savvy about that. I'm particularly reminded of the gender pay gap bot, where organizations would publish on social media, we've done this and reduced our gender pay gap, and yada, 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 yada. And the bot would actually go and find the kind of reality and expose the reality of it. You know, we're doing this for International Women's Day, and the bot would say, yes, but your gender pay gap is still X, Y, and Z. So there are means for people to hold your organization to account in a quicker, faster, and sort of higher visibility manner than ever before. And that's why transparency is really important. Not only publishing where you are, but where you plan to get to, and that ability to hold yourself accountable and be transparent is what comes across as authentic. And authentic is something that is incredibly powerful when used correctly, but if not, backfires. And one of the things that I've learned is all the corporate statements in the world in the candidate market don't mean all that much. But employee advocacy means a great deal. So you've seen the rise of things in the UK like Glassdoor, etc., which give people a voice. And therefore, one of the best ways to attract diverse talent is to use those voices within your business already. So little iPhone videos about, this is what I do in my day job. This is why I like this type of business. This is what my employer is trying to do on diversity and why I support them, etc. These sorts of things are powerful because they're not corporate. They're coming from the individual and they are authentic. So at Lloyd's, we have our statutory reports, of course. We have a sustainability report every year. And we actually have a culture dashboard, which we publish, which shows not only the diversity of the market, but how we're tackling our kind of culture issues across the market year on year. And that is publicly available and gives our candidate base the confidence that actually you can probably still find articles on Google about Bloomberg, but you can actually year on year see what action we're taking, improvements we're making, and how it's getting better year on year. So that kind of transparency for me is key, so that when you're trying to attract diverse talent, your will to do so comes across as authentic. And then for me, it comes down to how inclusive your talent acquisition processes are. And this is unfortunately where I think still a lot of organizations become unstuck. So they have great advertising around inclusion, around diversity, but then you run into the application process, the candidate selection process, and it is nothing of the sort. And the first kind of regular issue we see often is essentially a failure around digital accessibility. And in the UK, nearly 1 in 5 working age adult is disabled. So the accessibility of your website is very important. Making sure it's AA compliant as a minimum is one of the things to do. And what you find when a website is accessible, normally it's more usable as well. So your candidate experience gets better. And particularly then thinking about your selection process. How do people apply to you? Is it CV? Is it application? How do you use the data? And what's driving people to do that? And this is where I think there are a number of aspects which people need to consider. I think the first is there seems to have been a drive over time to have a kind of one-size-fits-all recruitment methodology. And I think that's beginning to dissipate now. But it does limit the type of diversity you can bring in. And I'm a big fan of having different recruitment models for different types of vacancies and requirements. So, for example, in our early careers recruitment, we use a strengths-based recruitment model. For experienced hires, we use a competency-based model. For technical roles, we use skills-based auditioning. And at a leadership level, there's more detail around leadership assessment, etc. And it's very important to marry up these practices at every stage, so that you're conscious of not only the process you've got, but also how that process is impacting diverse candidates. And this is where data becomes hugely important. Data on every single stage in your recruitment process allows you to identify where candidates are maybe dropping out of the process, so aren't successful, allows you to investigate why. And it allows you to target your resources and investment in the area that it's needed most. I've seen a lot of organizations invest a lot of money in attraction, and actually the issue is at shortlisting, because that's where all their diverse candidates are dropping out. But they've done nothing to assess the shortlisting process, scoring methodology, whether it's CV, application, blind audition, skills-based, strength-based, etc., to understand the impact that the model of recruitment is having. Akin to that is also the competency of everybody involved in that hiring process. So are your job descriptions using inclusive language, and is your recruitment team tooled up to ensure that regularly you're screening out male-centric descriptors, ensuring that you don't have qualifications in the job description which aren't required to do the job well, to ensure that your job descriptions aren't essentially too overweighted on experience requirements rather than the skills and knowledge to do the job. And that those involved in interviewing are trained in good interview practice. And at Lloyd's, every single recruitment manager has to be accredited in inclusive recruitment. Without that, you're not allowed to undertake any interviews. And we do that for a very specific reason. We don't have a huge ton of recruitment that goes on. And I think something like we'll hire 200 people this year in total. So every single person we hire is an opportunity for us. And we can't afford to waste that opportunity because managers are acting on instinct or succumbing to affinity bias, etc. Part of the way that we supplement that is we have a diverse panels initiative. And we use our staff network at Lloyd's called Lloyd's Together. And we draw and train interviewers from that network to complement our accredited recruitment managers. Why? It enables us to ensure we have diverse panels and diverse in every sense of the word, not just gender or ethnicity, but a very broad base of diversity. And it allows us to have that outside lens. So at a certain level for us, which is kind of junior management, we'll have diverse panel interviewers who are in those interviews who are from different parts of the business. Why? It's a different perspective. And we find that that is incredibly useful for us in terms of ensuring it's a positive candidate experience, and that we're ensuring that we are delivering those diverse hires that we need. And for us in insurance, I ran a talk at our Dive-In International Diversity Festival for a bunch of CEOs in the market. And I asked a question, how many of you meant to be in insurance? And in that room, a couple of people put up their hand, which meant that most of the people, even at the top of the sector, had fallen into it by accident. And then we asked we picked up some research on school leavers, and it turned out that we'd asked 15,000 school leavers what industries do you think are cool and would want to join, and insurance was like 10th out of 16. We were 2 points above construction, but had declined on the scores from last year. And that really, really told us that we weren't describing properly the opportunities to the talent that we wanted to bring in. In fact, it was cloaked in mystery. So we spent a while talking to graduates, to high school kids on average, and we generally got back a couple of responses when we asked, what do you know about insurance? Well, I don't know, my parents have car or house insurance, and basically you're thieves, you take people money, you don't pay them. Well, actually, that's not what Lloyd's does. Lloyd's does specialty insurance. Do you know what that is? I have no clue. Well, do you know Lloyd's insured the Beatles and this, that, and the other? Things that are interesting that people wouldn't necessarily associate with our career. And we understand that to develop a kind of really diverse talent pipeline with a context, with a history, like Lloyd's, with an industry, which is kind of shrouded in mystery as to how it really works. Outreach is a fundamental route for us in terms of developing diverse talent. But it's about being able to speak in the language that people understand. It's about being able to match their aspirations and listening to what they need from you. And that has been a huge drive for the improvement of inclusive practices across the Lloyd's market. But it's not by accident. So, I mentioned earlier that one of my roles was regulation of the Lloyd's market around culture and diversity. So there's lots that we provide, which is the carrot, but there is also the stick, which means that there are fundamental standards that we expect any company operating in our market to be able to achieve. And inclusive recruitment practices are part of that. And to do that, we upskill around inclusive recruitment, but we also have targets for diverse hiring, and for some targets maybe a bit controversial still. However, for me, it's really, really simple. What gets measured gets done, and we're in the business of progress, and that means holding people to account sometimes for what they're doing. And therefore, we set an inclusive hiring target for our market. We want 1 in 3 hires to come from ethnic minority backgrounds, or BAME, or however you like to describe it. We've got a women in leadership, a leadership target, and we're aiming for parity across the market. And we can see by requiring competency, upskilling people to deliver, having targets to measure against, and reporting and playing back our progress, we are seeing improvements year on year on year on year. And the rate of that progress is starting to accelerate. And then the question that generally follows all of that is, well, all of this is great, but I only have X amount of money to be able to spend on recruitment or attraction or talent acquisition. And how much of that should I be really putting into the D&I space? And for me, that comes back to your use of data. If you know at each stage of your recruitment process where diverse candidates are dropping out or where the roadblocks are, then you can target your investment in a wise way to fix the issues that you have. So there's no point spending a bunch of money on attraction if shortlisting is the point in your process where you have an issue. Focus your investment on the shortlisting, likewise interviewing, etc. There's no magic figure for me in terms of what you should invest in order to improve your diversity outcomes. However, what I do know from many, many years of experience is it's not generally going to happen for free. So you are going to have to invest something in it, even if that investment is time. And by that, I mean, you can't afford an advertising campaign, so you go and you use your employee advocacy, iPhone videos, et cetera, et cetera. The investment that you make in it does pay off with the impact, but you have to measure it. I'm not a believer in evolution in this space. I think too many organizations have relied on evolution. It will generally happen. Just give it time, et cetera, et cetera. I'm a big believer in revolution in this space. You have to be deliberate about what you want to achieve. You have to invest smartly, and you have to hold those involved in the process. You have to hold them to account for the results. And I think putting that in place, you get to a position where everybody is winning because the candidate experience is better. You're attracting better diverse talent, a better technical quality of talent, and that kind of you're achieving the speed of hire and the diversity and quality of hire at the same time. And if I could make a plea to kind of talent acquisition professionals out there, speed and cost of hire aren't the only metrics you should be looking at. Speed, quality, cost, and diversity of hire are what you should be targeting, in my opinion. So I will stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mark. I've listened to you a number of times, and always clear. Sorry, and very, very wide-ranging number of thoughts in a short time. So thank you so much for that. One of the questions is around getting the buy-in. You talked about hiring managers being accredited in inclusive hiring. Is that something that's happened recently? Did it take a lot of campaigning to get it in, or was it there? And is it a one-off accreditation, or does it the hiring managers who remain hiring have to re-accredit time and time again?
Yeah, so essentially you can't hire without being accredited, and then every couple of years you need to be re-accredited. And in terms of buy-in, the reason we got the buy-in is because we had the data. We had the data to say, well, we spent money on attraction, we fit shortlisting, and actually this is where the issue is happening. The issue is happening in interview stage. So we're going to interrupt that interview stage by requiring more competence and putting disruptions into the process, like the diverse panelists. So the buy-in was easy because we could identify where in the process the issue was happening, and then we could go and plug it.
Okay, it's clearly touched a few people, this comment, because a number of people are asking, is the accreditation internal, or are you using an external organization?
Yeah, so the accreditation is an external accreditation. So we use the Clear company to accredit our hiring managers. Excellent.
I'd say thank you for the people asking the questions, but they've clicked the anonymous attendee button. So thank you for those questions. I was personally going to ask about the diverse panels and how easy it is to recruit for those. It's something which we launched in the civil service when I was running recruitment there. and it was the same volunteers putting their hands up time and time again. So how do you make diverse panels as diverse as you need them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I mentioned our Lloyd's Together kind of diversity inclusion network, and it is an overarching network. And within that, there are 7 communities, which range from kind of military to future talent, multicultural, disability, LGBTQ+, all kinds of diversity you can possibly think of. And we have well over 170 people within that kind of ERG framework or diversity network framework. And that's equivalent to a bit more than 10% of the company. And because our range, we're not hiring thousands of people a year, we're hiring 200 people. We have quite a good selection of people to choose from. And it's about how we sell it to them. One, they're already engaged, so they're part of the network. 2, we can offer them that extra training. So they've got, they're now an accredited recruiter, and they can use that when they're applying for management vacancies or others. And then they are actively wanting to help the company. So as much as they're helping us, we're helping them with experience of recruitment and a qualification. But we specifically look to our ERGs or our diversity network to help us with that.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. Now, can I ask you to stay on the line, and we're going to come back to you for unrecorded Q&A in about 20 minutes, if that's okay. Great.
Perfect.
Thanks. Thank you. Dave Burford, delighted you can join us today from Mimecast. Dave is the Director of Talent Acquisition there. Now, they're all about computer and network security. They need some quite tough to fill roles hired technical skills, and turn to Horsefly labour market analytics to help them do that. Dave, I'm going to give you 20 minutes to tell us how you manage to fulfill all the requirements at Mimecast, and tell us a little bit more how you deployed the Horsefly product.
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, happy to do so. Never thought I'd hear myself say this, but we are a company that is 280 years younger than the previous speaker. We're about 20 years old. We're still founder-led, a South African guy by the name of Peter Bauer. We've got about 2,100 people spread across 13 countries. And again, very different to Mark's scenario. We fill around 750 positions a year, of which probably 2/3 of those are external. Just to sort of give you like a very brief, context about Mimecast, we specialize in email and collaboration security. People will be sadly all too familiar with cyber attacks that happen, that you see and hear on the news often. More than 95% of cyber attacks generally happen as a result of an email being, an attachment being opened. And in these days where we use Zoom and Slack and Teams and things like that for collaborating and sharing files, it's every bit as important that level of protection extends across the whole business. So we've got about 40,000 customers. We monitor something like 1.3 billion emails a day, and we know that from the last 12 months data, we have detected and defended 2 billion potential attacks from the threat actors that are around the world, whether that's phishing or credential harvesting. It's an enormous industry, and as you can imagine, the technology continues to evolve at pace, particularly as the threat actors themselves become more and more sophisticated. So, in short, what we're trying to do is to stop bad things happening to good people and to good companies. So, very much in that mind, we do continue to invest very heavily in our R&D capability and our sort of product and engineering function. And typically that has always been in our main 2 centers, which is London and also a place called Lexington, just outside Boston, Massachusetts. We have other locations in across Europe and South Africa, but that's where the main part of the engineering talent has typically been. So prior to bringing Horsefly on board, I guess 10, 12 months ago, we had already done some market analytics and trying to determine where else can we, find suitable talent and the best talent, to grow our technical capabilities, and sort of narrowed it down to 3 or 4 locations, I guess. But then when we, bought the Horsefly solution, it enabled us to drill down into some real detail in terms of the sort of locations that we were looking for. We ended up on in Canada, so a place called Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto, which our CTO and a couple of others had previous experience of, but we needed to really test that. So what we were able to do, utilizing the Horsefly platform, and having, being very careful and prescriptive in terms of the skill sets that we were looking for, we could see and validate and verify quickly and easily, exactly which locations that talent was in, what their experience levels were, what the demand for that particular skill set was in a particular market, what sort of educational background people had, and it also gave us salary and total rewards information that we were able to sort of verify against our internal benchmarks and total rewards propositions. And then based on that, we built a programmatic advertising campaign and candidate targeting campaign with our fantastic employer brand team. And through the insights that Horsefly provided, simple things that might sound like what job titles people use. In the UK, it is often referred to as a software engineer. Canada, it doesn't resonate. Software developer is QA, quality assurance engineer. The Canadian market was software development engineer in test. So everything was then shaped around different keywords that people are using in their adverts, using in their CVs. We were able to target which sort of companies people were currently at. And what was also interesting was the analytics showed us that a good number of people with the kind of skill sets that we were looking to weren't necessarily in IT and cybersecurity. They were in other SaaS sectors and also fintech. And as it sort of transpired, I think 35% of the hires that we made in this Centre of Excellence in Canada came from fintech, which previously wouldn't have been a sector that we would necessarily have tried to target. From a demographics perspective, when we looked at the Horsefly data to begin with, we could see that the Canadian market, and particularly the Ontario market, offered a great deal of diversity in terms of gender and ethnicity. So I think the figures were around 25% female in the STEM sector, and around 57% Asian. And in terms of the outcome of that, so we built this Centre of Excellence now, 35 people to begin with, that will soon grow. 33% of our hires were women, and close to 70% were ethnically diverse. So, it's something that Mimecast as an organization, Mimecast as a culture, has always had, inherent in our being. And we are, just delighted with the outcome that we've been able to hire such a highly skilled new workforce in a location where we had no real brand recognition, no presence, but it's worked out really well for us. And utilizing the Horsefly technology, we were able to build candidate collateral, landing pages, videos. Mark was talking before about utilizing people from within the organization to talk about their journey, and what diversity of hiring means to them. We've done exactly that, so it was nice to hear that sort of endorsement of what we've been doing, and we know that from talking to the candidates that we've brought on board, that that was an important part of their decision-making process, that they could see that Mimecast actually took it seriously. From a personal perspective, I've been with Mimecast 2 years, and I'm in my mid-50s exactly. But I've learned more about DEI and what it means in my role here at Mimecast than I've ever done in my career. I used to think I was relatively savvy, but a lot of the things I've seen have really sort of opened my eyes to that. We have a very strong commitment to DEI, and a very strong function within the organization that drives that. Similarly to Lloyd's, we have ERGs for gender, ethnicity, LGBTQ, disabilities, etc. We also have something similar to what Mark was alluding to, called Future Builders, where members of our ERGs are part of the interview panels, particularly for senior hires, to really ensure that it's not a one cap fits all process, and that candidates also are able to challenge us as an organization as to what DEI really means. So we are, we're really happy with the way that it has gone. Canada, we're going to use that now. We're about to embark on a hiring process for a new Centre of Excellence in Bangalore. We will be using the same kind of model that we've proven to be successful in Canada. And again, we've got to thank from Horsefly Pete, who has been an incredible resource for us and support as our CSM in helping us to understand and to really make the technology tick and give us what we need. So that is how we've done it. I think what else can I say about that? Also based on the analytics and the programmatics, we've also introduced an additional technology platform called Codility, which tests software coding ability. So it's been a real combination of a human interaction with market data analytics, assessment, and it's actually enabled us to sort of reduce our hiring cycle time from initial screen to offer down to 10 days, which previously was unthinkable. But we were able to get people through because we know that this in this market, particularly in technology, people often have 2 or 3 processes running in tandem, often 2 or 3 offers. So when we find top talent, we need to be able to assess them fairly, objectively, and ensure that they fit the Mimecast culture, but also have the technical capabilities so that we can not only attract them but to retain them as well. So we wouldn't have been this successful for sure without Horsefly, and I'm really looking forward to replicating that same success in the coming months in India.
Dave, are you happy to take a few questions?
Absolutely, yes.
So it sounds like they're saying how successful the use of labour market analytics has been for you, but there must have been a point where you didn't have Horsefly or any other labour market analytics tools. How easy was it for you to get over maybe the skepticism that buying this product will help hiring managers who must therefore, because they're good at what they do, they must know the market better than anybody, surely. How did you get over that skepticism and bring in a tool such as Horsefly?
Good question. Yes, there was an element of skepticism to begin with, because particularly in a product and engineering organization, engineers are very binary, and everything has everything is precise, and quite often this is the way we've always done it, this is the way it works, these are the kind of assessment tests that I've always used for candidates in the past. And also an element of gut feel in terms of, well, I'm sure there are some good people there. We were able to quickly, at a high level, demonstrate the capability and validity of the data through the reporting mechanisms from Horsefly. And then when we showed and we kept the business informed all the way through that, things were actually stacking up, and that what we were seeing in the initial analytics was actually right. It so became the norm. And I guess from a human standpoint as well, what has been critical to the success of this has been the collaboration. So this isn't just a talent acquisition success. This is collaboration from the CTO himself downwards, through his leadership team, through the various hiring manager teams, through our brand, our DEI. It's been a true collaboration of people with a goal and a target in mind to try and do this. And we actually stood this Centre of Excellence up for 35 people up in less than 1 quarter. So we've I personally was confident in the platform. I didn't take any convincing, and now I think the business knows and recognizes that, and that when we, as we continue to fortunately expand our global footprint, if we say we can go into somewhere and provide analytics, whether it's a new sales location or a engineering location, we have a seat at the table that provides great value and insight to the business.
Excellent. I think you must have stunned everybody into silence with the description of success that you did, using Horsefly to help identify the skills for that location, and I guess Bangalore is yet to get to be delivered, so we don't know, but you're anticipating that to be equally as good a success story, I guess.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, it's a very different market. Obviously, application rates will be very different. So we're looking forward to the challenge again. Brand recognition in the Indian market is something that is very important to that cohort that we don't yet have. So we will again. We've built a campaign based on previous success, and hopefully that will stand us in good stead. So looking forward to building that out, which will be probably eventually 10 times the size of what we built in Canada.
Wow, excellent. Well, Dave, thank you for that. Stay on the line whilst we bring Mark back. Now, I'm going to ask the Horsefly team to stop the recording of the seminar, but huge thanks to the Horsefly